The stagecoach rattled to a stop in Silver Springs, Montana territory, dust swirling like specters in the late daylight. Isabella Fox pressed the last of her courage into a trembling hand, clutching the worn leather satchel that held her scant worldly goods. She stepped down onto the wooden boardwalk with a heart full of hope, hope born of 4 months' worth of carefully penned letters from Jackson Thorne, the cattleman whose advertisement had promised companionship and a fresh start on his sprawling Bitterroot Ranch. 6 days of jolting wheels and prairie wind had left her gray dress wrinkled and her fingers raw from gripping the coach's edge. Yet she straightened her spine, determined that the sacrifices she'd made in Philadelphia, losing her seamstress position, selling her meager furniture, exhausting her last dollar on passage, would culminate in this single moment, the beginning of her new life. Fresh spring water, last stop for Bitterroot, the driver called through the cloud of dust, and Isabella's pulse caught. Fresh water? The name had danced through her dreams since Jackson's first letter arrived at her boarding house, a lifeline of ink across yellowed stationery. She retrieved that same envelope from her pocket, its edges fraying from constant folding, and ran her fingertip over Jackson's looping signature. A knot of longing and fear tightened in her chest. Had her image in his mind matched the reality of her arrival? A wool merchant and his wife watched from the coach steps, their fine clothes and polished boots marking them as Rivertown regulars. "You disembarking here, miss?" the woman asked, adjusting her lace-trimmed bonnet. "Yes, ma'am," Isabella managed, voice small. "My fiancé is expecting me." The merchant's wife exchanged a knowing look with her husband, pity edged with curiosity. "A brave soul," she murmured, as Isabella tucked the letter into her satchel. Brave was not the word Isabella would have chosen. Desperate was closer to the truth. After her parents succumbed to influenza 3 years earlier, she had eked out a living sewing dresses for factory girls in the grimy streets of Philadelphia, scraping together rent until the factory's closure cast her onto the sidewalk. When a matrimonial advertisement from Jackson Thorne arrived, rancher seeks bride, must be willing to assist with household duties. Photograph appreciated but not required. Isabella had answered with her honesty. A seamstress with modest means, an accountant of simple skills, eager to learn ranch life even if she knew nothing of cattle. She'd mentioned her family's passing, but not her near poverty. She'd saved every dime for this ticket west. Now, standing on unfamiliar boards under a vast blue sky, she felt every penny pinch. The merchant couple's coach rolled on, wheels churning up rusty dust that clung to her boots as she drew a breath and scanned Silver Springs' single main street. Rough-hewn buildings lined the plank sidewalks, a general store, a saloon with swinging doors, a tiny church steeple leaning at a crooked angle. Townsmen in wide-brimmed hats milled about, eyeing the stagecoach with mild interest. Isabella paused beside her satchel, palms damp as she scanned the faces for Jackson Thorne, tall with brown hair and a beard, as his letters had described, but that could apply to half the men milling around. A boy of about 12, straw between his teeth, tugged at her skirt. "Are you meeting somebody, ma'am?" "My fiancé," she said, offering her best smile, throbbing nerves hidden beneath polite poise. "Jackson Thorne?" The boy's eyes widened. "His ranch is 3 miles west. He comes here Saturdays for supplies. He was at Peterson's Mercantile about an hour ago." Isabella's breath caught. "Thank you." The boy scampered off, and she smoothed her skirts, clutching the satchel and Jackson's letters as if they might slip away. This was the moment she had journeyed 1,000 miles to reach, and yet her heart pounded with dread as she walked toward the gunsmith's shop where Jackson Thorne, her imagined husband, waited. Jackson Thorne stepped from the dim interior of the gunsmith's, a box of cartridges in one hand. His broad shoulders filled the doorway of Armstrong's Firearms, and the June sun highlighted strands of chestnut hair in his beard. He looked every bit the frontier gentleman Isabella had pictured, only more real, more immediate. She drew a steadying breath and approached, satchel clasped to her side. "Mr. Thorne?" He straightened, studying her in silence for a moment that stretched too long. Then his eyes narrowed, not in recognition, but in assessment. "Miss Fox," he said, voice courteous but distant. "You made good time." She managed a smile, heart fluttering. "Your last letter said any time after May 1st would be fine. Today is May 15th. He nodded slowly, gaze drifting over her plain dress and threadbare gloves. "Indeed," he replied, as though that answered everything. Welcome to Silver Springs. Shall we speak somewhere more private? He led her across the street to Millard's Cafe, its boards settling under each footstep. Inside, low lamplight painted warm pools on rough-hewn tables. He seated Isabella in a corner booth and ordered coffee for them both. An uneasy hush fell between them, broken only by the clink of spoons against china plates. Isabella placed Jackson's letters on the table, hope tingling in her chest. "Your letters," she said, voice steady. "I've carried them with me." He lifted an eyebrow but said nothing, stirring his coffee slowly. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," he began at last, not meeting her eyes. Isabella's heart sank. "A misunderstanding?" He cleared his throat. "In your letters, you described yourself as a woman of modest means. I took that to mean you had some resources for settling here." She swallowed against a sudden dryness. "I thought modest means meant honest poverty. I have only what I could carry, this satchel, these clothes, and a handful of savings for supplies." His jaw tightened. "A man in my position needs a bride who brings more than just a willingness to learn. I have a herd to expand, investments to manage. A wife must contribute materially, either through inheritance or other assets." Cold fury rippled through Isabella. "I told you everything I had, my seamstress skills, my bookkeeping experience, my readiness to help. I could not afford a photograph, so I wrote truthfully. You implied I would be more than a financial burden." Jackson looked away, as if pained. "I cannot maintain my standing with a wife who adds to my expenses," he said, voice clipped. The merchant's wife from the stagecoach had called her brave. Now she felt exposed and foolish. "So you'd rather embarrass me publicly than be honest from the start?" she asked, voice low but fierce. He flinched. "I offered what I believed to be a practical arrangement." She rose, satchel in hand. "Practicality has its limits. I'm sorry I burdened you, Mr. Thorne." He grew pale. "Miss Fox—" "Isabella," she interrupted, stepping away. "My name is Isabella." "Isabella," he repeated, struggling for composure. "If you'll allow me—" But she did not wait to hear more. She walked out into the afternoon heat, leaving behind the echoes of his regrets and her shattered expectations. Outside, stares from passers-by weighed her down as she marched away from the cafe, each dusty step a reminder of her folly. Behind her, Jackson Thorne's figure blurred in the doorway, her promised future dissolving beneath Silver Springs' sandy sun. Isabella's shoulders ached from weeks of tension, but she forced herself onward, away from town and into the open prairie. A thunderhead gathered on the western horizon, its dark belly promising rain. Swallows skimmed low over the grass, then darted away as the first heavy drops began to patter across the earth. Panic rose in her chest. No town, no coach, no money for new passage. She stumbled toward a distant black silhouette, a barn perched on a gentle rise, alone, except for a modest log house nestled among pines beyond it. The promise of shelter spurred her through the downpour. Inside the barn's dry embrace, horses stamped in their stalls, nostrils flaring moisture. Isabella sank onto a bale of hay, chest heaving as the rain hammered the roof. Exhaustion claimed her limbs and her vision blurred. She closed her eyes, willing herself to rest despite fear's whisper. To sleep here was to risk the unknown. Yet a deeper exhaustion prevailed, and darkness swallowed her. "Miss Fox?" A rough voice roused her. A lantern swung into view, revealing broad shoulders covered in a well-worn shirt. The man's dark hair was flecked with gray, and his eyes were a clear steel. He held the lantern toward her. "You got caught in the storm. This is Hawthorne Ranch. I'm Caleb Hawthorne. You can't stay here all night." Isabella started to rise, teeth chattering. I'm terribly sorry, sir. I was afraid I'd drown if I stayed out." He dropped the lantern into its iron hook. "I've saved worse than trespassers from a downpour." He offered no judgment. "Come on, I'll get you warm." He led her to the house, where a fire glowed in the hearth and a pot simmered on the stove. Fresh clothes lay folded on a bench, simple but clean woolens, sturdy boots, a nightgown, and robe. "My sister lived here once. She left these." Caleb's voice carried no explanation, only practical courtesy. Isabella washed and changed, then joined him at a rough-hewn table. He ladled stew into wooden bowls, potatoes, venison, wild onions. "Thank you," she breathed, tasting the welcome in each spoonful. All right, he said softly. You look half frozen. Eat. He watched her with steady concern rather than condescension. Outside, thunder rumbled and rain drummed a lullaby on the roof. For the first time since Jackson Thorne's rejection, Isabella felt something like safety. Not the safety of a promised fiancé, but the assurance of a stranger's kindness. When sleep finally reclaimed her, it was deep and dreamless, cocooned in fur blankets beside that crackling fire. Over the next 3 days, Isabella settled into a rhythm at Hawthorne Ranch that felt both foreign and familiar. Mornings began with the crack of dawn's light, Caleb stoking the hearth embers while she prepared oatmeal and coffee. After breakfast, she swept and dusted the main room with the same diligence she had once reserved for sewing fine dresses. By midday, she was kneading dough or tending the small garden beside the house. Turnips, lettuce, herbs now thrumming with summer growth. Caleb taught her to check the woodpile for rot, to recognize the tracks of deer and elk that grazed at dusk, to predict weather by the color of the smoke as it rose from the chimney. In return, she mended his shirts, trimmed his coats, and shared skills from her Philadelphia days, keeping his accounts, balancing ledgers, sewing strong leather repairs. Word of the stranded mail-order bride at Hawthorne Ranch traveled swiftly. On her third afternoon, Martha Fletcher, middle-aged iron-spun hair in a tight bun, appeared on the porch, arms crossed and eyes sharp as a hawk's. Isabella froze mid-sweep, bracing for a rebuke. "Mrs. Fletcher," she said carefully, pausing. The woman appraised her in silence. "So it's true," she said finally. "Caleb's taken in Thorne's cast-off. If you're not careful, you'll sweep more than dust. Town gossip's plenty wild." Isabella bowed her head. "Caleb offered me work after things fell through." Martha softened slightly. "He's good folk. He doesn't heap charity on strangers. If he trusts you, I hope you won't disappoint him." "I won't," Isabella promised, and Martha left her with a basket of clean shirts and a curt instruction about hanging them to dry. As the barn hands rode by, one gruff man tipped his hat and nodded. "Good pick, Mrs. Fox," he muttered. The other, younger, flashed a grin. "Welcome to the Hammer House," he teased, and Isabella found herself laughing at the nickname, Hammer, in homage to Caleb's unyielding integrity. By week's end, even the saloon girls had come to see her as more than Jackson's rejected bride. They asked about garden secrets and trading patterns in town. Caleb's faithful foreman, Eli Carter, though reserved, nodded approval when she asked about herd rotations. Jonah Reed, loud and brash, declared her cooking the best in the valley and swore he'd ride her praises back to Silver Springs. Isabella realized she had found purpose once again, and her confidence blossomed like the garden she tended. Sunday dawned bright and still, but a tremor of tension ran through the ranch. Isabella delivered biscuits and bacon to the table, finding Caleb standing by the window, gaze fixed on the horizon. "Trouble?" she asked, sliding into her seat. He handed her a telegram, grim lines spelled in official script. "Lydia's coming home," he said, voice tight. "Stage arrives at 3. Isabella's breath caught. "Your sister?" "Lydia," he confirmed. "She left Silver Springs after, well, things ended badly, and she's been in Denver ever since." This telegram said urgent matters. Despite the joy of her own newfound stability, Isabella felt an old knot of anxiety tighten. Caleb's sister Lydia had once been the pride of the valley. Strong-willed, fair-haired, adored by all, until an affair with Jackson Thorne and some undisclosed scandal drove her from town. Now, Lydia's return threatened to reopen old wounds Caleb had worked so hard to bury. Jackson Thorne arrived at noon, riding alone, no posse this time, but the glint in his eye was as sharp as ever. Isabella watched from the porch, heart pounding, as Jackson dismounted neatly and tipped his hat to Caleb without greeting her. "Hawthorne," he said formally. "I see your sister's back." "She is," Caleb replied, voice steady. "And I hope this visit fixes what broke between you." Jackson's mouth twisted. "I'm here on business." He turned to Isabella. "Miss Fox, a word?" Isabella squared her shoulders. "Please, Isabella, if you have business, we can discuss it in the house." He followed her inside, though his gaze rarely left Caleb, whose fists rested on the table. "Jackson," Caleb said quietly, "I'd appreciate you leaving Miss Fox out of your business dealings." Jackson's dark eyes flicked to Isabella. "Of course," he said smoothly. But then, turning back to Caleb, added, I'm presenting an affidavit tomorrow at Denver to invalidate your claim on the Logan estate. I've secured Judge Harrison's interest and Dawson's testimony that old Mr. Logan complained of Hawthorne's pressure on his will. Caleb's face hardened. That's perjury. Jackson shrugged. We'll see. I suggest you settle your affairs here before the hearing, or you risk losing all your water rights and this ranch. With that threat, he strode out. Isabella felt Caleb's hand close around hers, the sinew strong beneath his coat sleeve. I won't let him. Her resolve hardened. Neither will I, whatever it takes. Night fell with the unspoken promise of confrontation. Lydia Hawthorne arrived just after dusk, stepping down from the stage in a tailored gray riding habit that bespoke city life. Her dark hair was swept into a severe twist, and her pale eyes swept over the homestead with a cool precision. Caleb met her at the doorstep, his relief palpable. Lydia, he said, voice cracking with emotion. You came. She laid a slender hand on his arm. I promised, brother. Then her gaze slid to Isabella, the stranger who had become Caleb's companion. And you must be the woman keeping my brother's hearth. Isabella, is it? I'm Lydia. Her nod was polite but reserved. Caleb exchanged a hesitant look with Isabella. The newcomer's steel edged into the warmth they had built. Inside, Lydia's calm presence filled the room as she unpacked a small valise, her movements economical. After a quiet supper, Caleb gave his sister a few moments' reprieve and joined Isabella by the hearth. He admires you, Caleb said softly. When Lydia left town, few understood my grief. I shut everyone out. He paused, swallowing. You revived the place. Isabella's heart fluttered, but she kept her tone steady. I only did what you offered. Honest work. He found more than help, Nathan corrected gently, using his given name in a rare moment of intimacy. He found a partner. Lydia entered then, glancing between them. Morning brings Jackson's affidavit, she announced, but I have something that may turn the tide. From her valise, she retrieved a thick packet of documents, correspondence, ledgers, affidavits, all bearing Judge Franklin's seal. I've been gathering proof of Langley's fraudulent dealings, his bribery attempts on our county officials, even evidence of forged endorsements for the Logan will. Tomorrow, he stands to be indicted for multiple counts. Then his land claim goes with him. Caleb exhaled a breath he seemed to have held for years. You did this for me. She offered a small, sardonic smile. I owe you a debt for the mistakes I made. Then, turning to Isabella, she studied her new sister-in-law. And you, Lydia continued, her gaze softening, you have my gratitude and my respect. I judge you unfairly. Isabella met Lydia's eyes, warmth blooming. Thank you. As the three spoke into the night, the walls of old resentment crumbled. They plotted their course. Sarah would deliver the packet to Judge Harrison at dawn. Caleb would prepare an official statement to the council. Isabella would stand by his side, her presence no longer a point of scandal, but a testament to their unity. The following day's sunrise gilded the Bitterroot Valley with golden light as Isabella stood between Caleb and Lydia outside Silver Springs Courthouse. Townspeople gathered, curiosity mingled with hope in their eyes. Inside, Judge Harrison, stern but fair, received Sarah's dossier. Jackson Thorne, flanked by his lawyer and the deputy Dawson, entered shortly after, his confidence faltering as new evidence was laid before the bench. Letters proving his attempt to bribe an official, notarized affidavits from multiple witnesses attesting to his coercion of old Mr. Logan, and Lydia's sworn testimony of Jackson's misdeeds. Isabella stood beside Caleb, hand in his, their clasped fingers a silent vow of solidarity. Lydia addressed the court with poise. Your Honor, I return not seeking vengeance but justice, for my brother, for our family, and for this community. The judge studied her and the documents, then turned to Jackson. The ex-cattleman's face blanched. He opened his mouth to object, but Dawson shuffled uneasily. Judge Harrison raised a hand. Mr. Thorne, evidence speaks louder than words. I hereby declare the affidavit filed by you against Caleb Hawthorne's claim null and void. Any further attempts to undermine his title or water rights will be met with contempt of court. A ripple of relieved applause followed the judge's ruling. Outside, the sun broke through scudding clouds, shining on the assembled throng. Jackson slunk away, head bowed, his supporters' cheers reduced to whispers. Isabella watched him go with a sense of closure. Her dreams of security had been crushed once by his vanity, but truth and solidarity had restored them in a stronger form. That evening, Hawthorne Ranch celebrated not with grand fanfare, but with simple joy. A modest wedding took place beneath the cottonwood trees in the yard. Judge Parker, back from retirement on special request, officiated, his gavel replaced by a gentle prayer for the couple's future. Isabella wore a dress she'd sewn herself from a bolt of cerulean cloth Lydia had brought, dressier than her blue work frock, but still imbued with her practical sensibility. Caleb stood beside her in his best coat, nerves hidden by his calm countenance. "I, Caleb Hawthorne," he began, voice steady but brimming with emotion, "take you, Isabella Fox, to be my wife. In storm and sunshine, in hardship and plenty, I choose you as my partner, my equal, my home." "I, Isabella Hawthorne," she replied, voice ringing with confidence, "take you to be my husband. With my heart, my hands, and my skills, I promise to stand with you through prairie dust storms and court battles alike, building together a life of respect, love, and purpose." As they exchanged rings forged from Silver Mine near Silver Springs, Lydia and Mara Fletcher and the ranch hands gathered round, cheering and whistling until the night air trembled. Firelight danced across smiling faces. In the quiet lull that followed, Isabella slipped her hand into Caleb's. "Do you believe in fate?" she whispered. He paused, looking out at the fields now black silhouetted by moonlight. "I believe in better choices." He joined their hands over her heart. "And I choose you." Under that vast Montana sky, two people, each once battered by loss and betrayal, found in one another not only salvation, but a partnership capable of weathering any storm. Their singular vows had not been born of whim or desperation, but of trial, understanding, and a steadfast commitment to build something enduring. And as the music rose for a final dance beneath twinkling lanterns, Isabella realized that hope, real, unshakable hope, had brought her to this place. And with Caleb Hawthorne by her side, she would never let it go.